welcome to a Tuesday 905 roundup with me, Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this is going to be our last episode for a little while. We're going to take a short break over the summer month and a bit, maybe. I don't know. We'll take our break as we did last year, and we'll probably be running some highlights of our episodes from the last year during that time. And we'll be back in plenty of time for all the fun of the municipal election that is coming up. And I know, I think there could be some fun stories there actually. Before the nominations close, I think we'll be seeing some interesting faces entering the race across the 905
I hope
region.
so. I hope so. I hope we see a little bit more of an attitude for change. So far it's been kind of I think people have kind of laid low because of the provincial election. People want to see how that ended off, and now hopefully people are looking at their support and they're going to be starting to throw their hats in the ring. And I hope we see a few lively contests throughout the region.
Certainly some lively things going on in council chambers, in a number of council chambers. And we're not going to talk about that today, but because we covered them all several times before. But from Hamilton to Brampton and a whole bunch of cities in between, there's a lot of fun things. So you would think that would carry over into the election. So we'll see.
Yep.
But today we're going to talk about a few other stories that all strongly affect the 905 region in one way or another. And starting off with, Joel, you noticed a story about rather than house prices, rental prices across our region.
Well, giving credit where it's due, today on insaga.ca, Jean Pereira wrote an article that's seeing basically 905 rental pricing are jumping for the really incredibly for the in 3 years, in the last 3 years. To put that in perspective, in Burlington, pretty much rental has increased about 19%, almost 20%, 19.8%. And that's incredible. A lot of, that's been all throughout the 905, throughout the GTA, that we're seeing these these rental markups going up. And this is at the same time that we're seeing housing pricing, like the housing bids are plummeting. People are finally that housing market seems to be really plateauing, if not cooling off. And so we're starting to see the housing prices come down and rentals going up. And it's a strange, we're not economists on this, but it's one of those things that you just look at and you say, this can't be good. There are people who rent for a variety of reasons. Part of it was they're looking to get into the housing market, and maybe we'll start seeing that in the coming months. Perhaps we'll wait and see. But there's so many. Those housing prices still haven't come down enough, and it's so there are people who are still just maybe holding on to rental spots before they put a bid on their housing. I view it as kind of a confirmation of what we suspected the last time we talked about housing prices, which was a few weeks ago, that we might be entering into a bit of a problem with the combination of the inflation that we're seeing, as well as the falling housing prices, that the plan to increase our supply in the 905 in Ontario in general may not pan out as planned.
The plan, such as it is for increasing supply, as envisaged. I think I'm saying two different words there. Envisaged by the PC party is just make it easy to build, which is fine, but it's a very blunt instrument. It's just like, let the builders do what the builders do. As we've said, as many other people more informed than us have said, that isn't enough. It's a particular kind of housing that we have a chronic shortage of, and that is actually that kind of first homes to rental accommodation. Rental accommodation in particular there's already a shortage. I mean, renting somewhere in Burlington is not easy at the best of times.
No.
If you suddenly take, you decrease the number of people willing to move out who would normally be kind of moving up the chain or whatever into buying a house, and now they're not going to do that for a year or two, maybe because interest rates have gone up or whatever. Well, now you've got a real rental accommodation problem. I guess ultimately, over a long term, it might make being a landlord more attractive, which it hasn't been a very attractive proposition for decades.
Well, that's that. The problem is, again, it comes down to a supply issue. There's not. You might be very attractive if you're a potential landlord to say, well, I'd love to build a few units and rent them out to people and start making my money back that way over the long term. The problem, as I saw it, I kind of still do, is inflation is causing the cost of building supplies to rise, and the profit margin on either flipping that unit or making your money back on renting is starting to dwindle an awful lot. Like that the cost of building something is just rising and rising and rising. And if I was a developer, I'm looking at this and saying, yeah, am I going to build a gigantic tower that that's going to cost me far more than I anticipated, and I can't sell those units for, you know, 2, 3, 4 times the asking price because the demand's not there. What I'm saying is basically I don't think the free market's going to solve this one for the free market alone, which is it's a real problem.
And it's one of the strange moments where I mentioned Stephen Harper and mentioned him in a way as kind of doing a kind of sort of good thing when we had the recession in 2008. Now, he was forced into it, and it wasn't his natural inclination, and it was but basically massive government intervention and spending as a way to offset a recession. Well, increased interest rates, just the general effects of COVID. I mean, I guess they haven't put us into a recession yet, but certainly when you see house prices going down, I mean, there's a whole load of factors at the moment that we're seeing. One way to deal with that would be large-scale government investment in house building for rental, specifically aimed at lower income people, people who want to rent short-term, long-term, whatever. And because that, the rental housing supply in Ontario is aging. I mean, there's very little new rental accommodation built, and so this is just a problem. It's already a problem. It's just going to get worse. And actually, I mean, again, I'm kind of repeating myself from previous episodes. I unusually, for someone who rents and who is not of a right-wing persuasion, have serious questions to ask about rent control, because if someone's renting out something, they will get their money one way or the other. You can't, either it's a free market or it isn't. Either they're allowed to set their rents or they aren't. If you say, well, okay, anybody who's living there for more than a few years, you can't increase their rent more than whatever it is, 2%, which is now 4% lower than inflation. Well, that means they have to get their money when someone does move out. Then they have to jack the price up more than they otherwise would have done, so that they've got some kind of safety net in place for, if this person stays in this flat for 20 years, we're not going to get completely screwed. So I just don't. I think. I mean, I know I am.
Well, the solution to this is going to be a very it's a complex situation. It's going to need a variety of different tools and regulations and funding to solve. And my worry is that this government, as we saw in the previous term, A, does not think big, and 2, does not want to be bold in its endeavors. They will do the bare minimum. That's why they said, okay, our big plan is we're just going to take off all the red tape on housing development, and we're going to let builders build. well, here we have a situation where they're going to do that. It's going to happen. I don't think the builders are going to sit there and say, I don't really want to build right now. I'll wait until after the recession and then I'll start building. And we're going to be in a worse situation off in terms of the housing supply, because there'll be more people who are in dire straits and in need of good living conditions. And it's just not going to be there. And even still, if you start saying, oh, it's the build, it'll be years, months, years until those accommodations are up and running. So yeah, this is something that it's going to require a lot of intervention now, and I think it has to come from the provincial government, but I'm not sure it's gonna happen that way.
No, no. I mean, it won't. It just it's not their style, you know.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's take a break there for our sponsor, and we'll come back with another fascinating story from the 905. And we're back. So, Roland, we have Halton Regional Chair is finally starting to heat up that race.
Yeah, it is. It's everything that's old is new again. We've talked a lot about new faces on councils recently, and I don't know, maybe this is the exception that proves the rule. Gary Carr, who has been, when did he become regional chair for Halton? 2008, something, 2010.
Yeah.
I know this is a good long time since Joyce Savaline, I think, was his predecessor as chair. She's been gone a long, good while. So there were widespread rumors that Gary Carr was going to retire. And to an extent, I mean, Jane McKenna, Burlington's former MPP, threw her hat into the ring to, resign from.
Yeah, she resigned from her position as MPP with the intention of running for regional chair.
Yeah, and we kind of, a lot of people felt that this, like, oh well, Gary's kind of tipped the nod or whatever, and she's, Gary Carr was formerly a PC MPP, albeit he ceased to be a PC MPP under somewhat of a cloud back in the day as was he speaker or deputy speaker? Anyway,
speaker.
There was he got in trouble with his own party, and that kind of ended his career there. But so he has a he's nobody's PC toady, he's I will say this, even though he's blocked me on Twitter. I don't hold it against him. I will say that he is his own person, and that's fair enough to say. And I also say, apparently he used to play hockey. Did you know that?
No.
You didn't? You must be the only person in Halton, every time you hear him speak, he mentions that he used to play hockey. I think he was in the minor leagues or something. Anyway, I'm just kidding. If you're listening, Gary, I apologize. I'm just pulling your leg. However, having widely rumored that he wasn't going to run again, he's running again. And, far from kind of stepping aside to help another PC politician take the chair, he's going to fight it out with Jane McKenna. And you know what? I suspect, well, I don't know. It's not the most exciting battle. I mean, I would be happy to see a fresh face at Halton Region, personally.
I would just say it's a job that I don't think anybody wants, because like the last election, Gary ran unopposed as well.
There technically was some. Oh, blimey! Ann Marsden ran.
Okay.
Ann Marsden is a frequent flyer, so to speak, in municipal elections in Halton and Burlington.
Well, either way, I mean but the point is, like, it's not a position that draws a lot of attention. There's not a lot of regional chair debates that happen throughout Halton, and so this one might change though a bit, because I think his declaring today that he was going to run for the regional chair has really thrown a wrench into Jane McKenna's campaign plans, because let's face it, she was for a good chunk of the while, she was probably going to run unopposed. People are like, nobody was really itching that they want to be regional chair. Um, it's not a glamorous elected position. I mean, just the name regional chair is not, it's not one of those, ooh, yes.
I mean, it should be higher profile than it is. And I mean,
You would think,
I kind of find it, you know, that they are spending billions of dollars. They have more power than the municipal governments. You know,
if he pisses off the trash collectors, yeah, you're gonna know who the regional chair is real fast. Actually, no. Here's the thing: probably wouldn't, because I guarantee you, if let's hypothetically, there's not going to be one that not happening, but if the waste collectors in Halton region, the people who pick up your garbage, if they went on strike for whatever reason, whatever the reason was, I guarantee you, the regional chair's office will not get a phone call. It will be every mayor. It'll be Burton, Mead Ward, whoever wins up in the Halton Hills, and Bob or Gord Krantz is going to be fielding phone calls up to the yin yang saying, "Hey, you got to settle with the trash unions," and it'd be like, that's not their call. I mean, like, they said at the regional table, they're at the regional council, but it's the chair who's going to probably be cheerleading that debate. And there's other things like that you think about, but it's a
I mean, they make big decisions. It's just that no one in the public pays attention. You know, we don't talk about it very much. It's difficult. I mean, like, I remember, in 2018-ish, Halton had a budget item for rebuilding one of the bridges on Highway 5. So this is for anybody not from Burlington and Oakville. Highway 5 kind of goes to the north of those two towns. Yeah, that was $1 billion item, $1 billion to spend on rebuilding a road and for widening and things like that. And it's like, and it was, the decision making was like, well, we'll reduce the usual stuff. We'll reduce congestion. We'll make it wider. Well, Highway 5 is already a horrible road. And I think anybody can say they enjoy driving along Highway 5. It's a mixture of strip malls and just, it's about, I don't know how many lanes it is wide, 6 lanes, certainly most of the way. And it's like, are you sure $1 billion on a bridge is the best use of money? Imagine what you could do with $1 billion put into transit. I mean, I couldn't believe the kind of numbers involved in this single damn bridge. But of course, no one's paying attention and nobody really cares because, bridges, whatever. But, it's not exciting. It's drains and it's.
So here's the thing: do you think? I mean, I suspect this race will heat up a bit because, again, Jane McKenna thought that it was going to be a cakewalk. She would just walk into this and land a plum 6-figure job again, or do we think that we're going to see a little bit of debate over this? Like, we're actually going to see, because there are two high profile numbers, and now I bring that up because things like this, like, now you actually have to seriously debate and say, like, why wouldn't we spend money to work on a regional transit plan? Why wouldn't we work on better transit infrastructure, things of that nature, to help us get around between these towns?
There are huge things which should. So right now in Halton, transit is a responsibility of the cities, which is stupid. As a result, it's almost impossible. Well, it's not almost impossible. It's far more difficult than makes any kind of logical sense to get a bus from Burlington to Oakville, let alone a bus from Burlington to Milton. You can't really do it.
There are reasons for that. I mean, I know for a fact that it's because you cannot drive. One bus transit system legally cannot pick up transit riders in another city. You can drop people off there, but you can't pick them up there.
Well, that's the law that needs to change.
That's at the provincial level. Well, I know for a fact that's now. I would argue it would be something like for a regional chair to go to the province and say, no, we want to take, or have an agreement maybe with all the top 4 mayors, say, no, we're going to create we're going to upload all the transit responsibilities to the Halton region.
Yeah, they
But
could campaign for that, and I think they should. I know that Marianne Mead Ward was talking about that in 2018, because she mentioned it to me, and I thought it was a great. I would have 100% agree with her. Transit makes no sense at, if you've got the two levels, if you've got regional and you've got lower level municipalities, it may, what sense would it make for Hamilton to have 5 transit systems rather than one Hamilton-wide regional transit? It's ludicrous. And if the law says you can't pick up people it's crazy. We're meant to be designing, and lots of great things have happened in transit in the last decade or so under multiple governments of multiple different parties. I will freely admit.
I think we're getting off topic here. But going back to the race between Jane and Gary, like these are ideas I would hope would come forward. Like we'd actually have a campaign of ideas.
Yeah.
Like,
are we going to be surprised if I see that?
Well,
I would be willing to bet that a Gary Carr might have stepped aside for a different person. It says, I suspect it says something about how Jane McKenna is viewed that Gary Carr is like, yeah, it's not that.
I'm coming back for another 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's just sad because you and I had a kind of a good debate or a good discussion of what could happen in the region that would really benefit people. And instead we have somebody who probably, I'm wondering, do they actually have a fully fledged campaign in terms of what they want to sell to the region? Because they weren't planning on it, right? You didn't have to put together a campaign because nobody else was running, versus Gary Carr, who comes in and just says, I'm not her. Vote for me.
And safe pair of hands, and Halton all the
right. I'm the guy who's been there for the last 15 years or so. Give me, I want the job again. And it just says something about our politics, where we'd have people not like, we have a lack of good debate. I'd say in like the last provincial election, I know people are tired of it, but we had just a poor lack of actual ideas and debates about what people need to make their lives better.
And if Jane McKenna wants to win, she has to have ideas for the first time in her life. She's not hanging on the coattails of her party leader.
Yeah.
She's
on her own. She is. She's on her own.
She's on her own for the first time, and I suspect she's going to come up short, unless I'm very much surprised, because I have seen no evidence over the last 10, 12 years, however long it is, that Jane McKenna has ever had an original idea of her own or any great insight about anything. And I hate to be so kind of brutal about it, but it's just the case.
Here's the challenge. Prove them wrong.
Yeah. I mean, if she wants to win, she has to give people a reason to choose something different. And that's very difficult at a municipal level at any time. It's extremely difficult at the regional level. And unless Jane McKenna's been hiding her gifts under a bushel extremely well for a decade, we'll
wait and see.
Well, she's had a few months already that she could have been out there, and I haven't seen anything. So,
all right, let's move on to our final chat for the night, for the day. Peel, more specifically, the Dufferin Peel School Board is in a bit of a rebellion, apparently, over de-streaming their academic streams.
Yeah, I mean, this is another story from. This is a story from the Pointer, which is is a website that does a lot of reporting on Brampton and Mississauga, especially Brampton. And Peel District School Board. I'm not sure that there's any district school board in the whole province, certainly not in the 905, that has covered itself in glory in recent years. But Peel is another school board that seems pretty dysfunctional. The ministry has stepped in at various points to basically bring them back into line, to kind of take over, and the issue at the moment is the phasing out of streaming, which for anybody who, well, I dare say we've all been at school at some point, so you probably know what streaming is, but the idea of putting people into different classes or based on judgments of academic ability, whether someone is more suited for an academic career or more suited for I don't know what the word is, vocational or non-academic anyway. And it's been shown time and time again that this has all kinds of negative effects. It is very open to intentional or unintentional biases and racism that will count against people from less economically fortunate backgrounds.
Let's be honest here. It's a program that you're streaming is supposed to be, you enter into high school, and by the age of 14, you're expected to be able to plan ahead exactly what your career will be. And you go into either an academically inclined stream of education, where the idea is you will graduate from high school and go on to get a degree from a lovely Ontario university and become a thinker and professional and earn all sorts of money at being a liberal elite. Or you go into a general, as you said, vocational stream, where the idea is, no, you can't cut it. You're supposed to go into the trades, and because you quite frankly, you're not smart enough. So you will go and become a tradesperson, and you'll go work for those lovely rich people in academia, fixing their toilets and installing their light fixtures. That's the general idea. Where it's come into is that the evidence is overwhelmingly there that racialized students are put into the less glamorous stream for no other reason than, well, the color of their skin. Let's be blunt about it. So I think it's a good idea that we're de-streaming. And again, credit where it's due. Let's give credit to Stephen Lecce for pushing this through and de-streaming our education system, because I, for the life of me, do not understand the purpose of it. Like, who at the age of 14 or 15 will predict, oh, this is exactly how I'm going to live my life until the day I retire?
Oh, I mean, and I guess there's that assumption that if you put less academically gifted children in the same class as academically gifted children, the less academically gifted will drag down the gifted. That is the hypothesis that many people, I think, take as fact. Now, there's been a ton of research done on this over decades and decades and decades, and we are told by the people who do the research that is not actually what the outcome is. The outcome of streaming, and this I can certainly speak to, and we were chatting before we came on, I think we can both speak to it with a certain amount of personal experiences, that the streaming can literally divide families, and it comes with a very strong stigma of success and failure on young children who at a young age, 14 here, are basically told, well, you're not good enough. You can't go with the bright kids. Now, I knew I wasn't, when I was at school, I was very bad at math, like abysmally bad at math. And I knew I was never going to be the smartest kid, but to kind of to stream you in that way, where you're kind of, you're judged and found wanting at a particular, rather given that flexibility of, you can, depending on how hard you work and depending, you can still get to university, and actually, I mean, just my experience with streaming in Britain, which happens even younger, and where I grew up, literally they would send you to a different school depending on whether you're on your depending on that judgment that was made at that age. As a white kind of middle class-ish child, I was very fortunate enough to have parents who could kind of play the system and get me into the good school through hiring tutors, through And actually,
Well,
just from the fact that I was the youngest of four, meant that they'd learned how to game things by the time they got to me. So I survived. But I mean, that proves the point that
that's what happens here. Is that white families are able to afford tutors and after school assistants to help their kids go through that academy. I think the whole system is just flawed because I think when most people, like, just cursory, like, you think of the Canadian education system, the idea is all these kids in a school, you learn together, you go to the sports together, you grow up together, and then you graduate and you go off to wherever, you go off to university and you go off to college, and you whatever, you find yourself then. The idea of this streaming, which is the notion of, oh well, by the time you're 14, we're pretty much going to pick out your life for you, is such a it tells me just how out of date our education system is with the realities of the 21st century. If you think, because if you think about the mentality of it, the philosophy of it is, you're going to only have one job or one career for your entire life. The idea is, you're going to, if you don't make it in the academic stream, you're going to go out, you're going to become a tradesperson. You're going to become a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter or something, and you're going to do that for life. Same as, oh, you're going to go into academia. Yeah, you're going to get a degree in math or science or history or English, whatever, and you're going to do that for life. You and I both know that is not the case. Anybody listening to this podcast will know that is not the case in the reality. You go through a variety of different careers. You're constantly going back to school to retrain, finish up a degree, broaden your skill set, whatever the case may be. Tools change by the time you get into your middle age. But our school system is still geared towards this idea of, oh, you're only going to have one job, and you're going to have to learn to do that. And the idea is, at the age of 14, we're going to train you to do that, which is why, again, I'm rambling a bit here and I'm getting definitely off topic, but bear with me, which is why you hear from, like, an university level professor saying kids graduating from Ontario high schools are not equipped for the rigors of university. And you have to wonder about that, because our high schools, like our education system, isn't geared towards, you think independently, you think on your own. It's, no, we train you to put the bolt in the door, bolt in the wheel, and work on the assembly line. That is its mentality. That is how it is structured.
And I don't want to put that too strongly, because I suspect, these are things which are in the process of being phased out. Have been phased out for a long time, and you also have to say that we're frequently told by multiple governments that Ontario schools hold up very well against schools anywhere in other places in the world. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't believe they're completely making that up. I think we have a fairly decent school system. Could be better, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And politics tends to not help when it gets involved. And this is what we're dealing with here. I mean, getting back to the Peel School Board.
Yep.
Again,
my apologies.
No. Well, I was wandering off topic earlier. We have a bunch of school trustees who probably are not the smartest students themselves, quite frankly, or if they were, that part of the brain has departed some years ago. Sticking their oars in, thinking they know better than the people who work at the education ministry, who, the apolitical, non-political, the researchers, the people who actually look into this stuff and say, oh, this is how this should be done. The school trustees have no business sticking their oar into it. If the ministry says do X, you have to do X. And even under a government that I do not like, they have the right to do that. The trustees do not. And again, it comes back,
Well, I look at it. I look at our coverage of school board trustees on this podcast. We haven't talked too much about the different Peel School Board, but we have talked about the Hamilton, as well as definitely the Halton Catholic school boards. I've come to the conclusion on this matter that school boards in general are completely useless and need to be abolished in this province. I
elected school boards. Yeah, I mean,
elected like
I really
like
don't
yeah,
think.
the elected, like the elected
Yeah,
trustees part are completely useless and need to be abolished. You can have an administration that handles the financial aspect of making sure that schools get a fresh coat of paint and science equipment is is working and all that. But aside from that, I don't see why we need elected school boards. They are completely useless, in my opinion, in this modern age.
yeah, and yeah, they don't. They attract two types of people. One, people who just get off on being elected to something, and basically being elected to the lowest level you can be elected to, uh, and those people who are hoping for uh, a political career further up the ladder. And there are good trustees, don't get me wrong, there are good trustees. However, you cannot prove to me that they're actually doing anything particularly necessary. And you look at the things in this province that are done by boards and committees that are not elected, police services board, for instance. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, there's a much better case for police services board being elected than the damn school boards. And they only get in the news when they're doing something dreadful, and we've seen plenty of evidence of dreadfulness in the last couple of years. And I mean, ultimately, it's. I mean, I fear that the municipalities are going in the same direction, but basically, trustees do not have any power of any great significance. I mean, they sign off on the budget. That is their only real job, and they get to pick a name for any damn new schools. I mean, how pathetic!
Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, we do not need to elect a bunch of no-hopers to. Sorry, Joel, you ran for that.
I ran, and I said this before. Looking back on my loss was the greatest victory of my life, because I look at I don't see, I just don't see any purpose to it. It's like the staff of school boards are able to facilitate the funds to where it needs to go. The fact that you have these trustees that want to nitpick and throw cogs in the machine and whatnot because they can, it does a disservice to our education system. They're more of an impediment than oversight. And here's the thing: if there is oversight, if there's an issue with a school, if there's an issue with the funding of a school, guess what? It's going to the Minister of Education. Nobody knows who their trustee is. Yeah. If you have an issue with, oh, my school doesn't have enough, the roof's caving in, you're calling up the Ministry of Education to say, fix my school. So
and the whole pride flag issue is only an issue because the ministry didn't want to get involved, and they didn't want to lay down the law for fear that they might be the ones who catch the flag. So they leave it to the trustees, and the trustees, I say, there are many good trustees, but there are also trustees who, in the Catholic school boards, are there because they are religious bigots. Yeah. And they're there to promote themselves, to do whatever they need to do to keep the family life coalition people happy, whatever. It brings the whole thing in dispute. And again, if I compare, Britain has a state-run Catholic schools, very much like Canada does, like Ontario does. I don't remember them. It may have changed in the last 20 years, of course, but I don't remember at any point Catholic schools ever being a controversial issue in Britain, because there's not a bunch of elected people sticking their oar in on religious issues to self-promote or to just, whatever it is that they think they're doing.
No, we need to get rid of school boards in general so that we can, in this case, let the Minister of Education and the Ministry of Education do the right thing, end this policy of streaming in our publicly funded schools. So the idea is that kids can learn together equally and, grow and become, and then have the rest of their lives to figure out what is it they want to become, not to be decided upon them at the age of 14.
I mean, these are real issues that I do not see. We just had an election, and the things that we've talked about repeatedly. We've repeatedly talked about how bad school trustees are. We've talked about, the municipal government being overridden to a degree that is out of step with public perception of municipal powers. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
There's so many things we talked about again and again and again. They weren't talked about at the election. Sure, housing was, but yeah, I mean, like these big issues with education are not talked about, but they will talk about, well, in 2018 we had the whole, sex ed thing, and things that just aren't important at all.
Well, I think on that note, let's bring this episode to a close because I see our time is running short. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And a reminder, we are off for the majority of the summer. We'll be back in time for this fall's municipal election to hopefully talk about the riveting and controversial stories that will emerge as the election approaches. So thanks, everyone. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Sorry, pushed the wrong button here.